a different kind of video for you today. I have been making these handmade scrunchies as gifts, and I am going to show you how I made these little sew-in labels using Canva. So to make my tags, I use bias binding, and so I just got this from Spotlight, and I got the 25mm one in a cream color. And you'll also need some transfer paper. So you'll have to just make sure that it is for inkjet printers. So just your regular printers that use ink. And I got it for light colored fabric as well. And I just got this from Officeworks. On the Canva homepage, and I am just going to go to business card, and I'm going to use that just because it's a good size. So first of all, we want to create our text image. So we come over to text, add a heading, choose our font. So I'm going to go with this one here because it's a nice retro feel. And I'm just going to say handmade with love. So I'm not that happy with the amount of space that's got in between the lines, so I'm just going to adjust that. So we go to spacing here and we change the line height. I'm going to take it all the way down to 0.5. Okay, and now we just want to make this as big as we can. Not that big, obviously. And we're just going to center that like so. Now we want to download that. So because we're not actually printing it as a business card, we don't need to save it as a PDF. We can just go ahead and save that as a PNG. Now I always make the size a size 3 because otherwise sometimes the text doesn't come out very sharp. So if you just increase the size, it stops that from happening. And so we just want to download that. Okay, once it's downloaded, I just drag it onto the desktop. Okay, now we want to go back to our home page, and this time I'm going to go and put in custom dimensions down here, custom size, and I am going to choose 900 by 1200. And now we want to get our text image off the desktop, and we're just going to drag it over here. So now that's uploaded. So we're just going to, we want there to be a little bit of space around your label. So I think that's a good size. And we just want to bring that down to the center. Okay, so now we're just going to copy. So Control C for a Mac and Control V. So that we've got another text image. We're going to bring that down so it's in line with the center as well. Now what we want to do is, because this is a sew in label, we want to flip the text so that it's up the right way once it's folded over. So to do that, we go to flip, and we flip that vertical to start with, and then we want to flip it horizontally. Now the last thing we want to do is I'm going to put a little box around our tag just to make it easier to cut out. So we're going to go to elements, and we're just going to grab a little rectangle, and we want to make that the same size as our design. and I'm going to make that just a simple grey colour. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I might actually make them a smidge smaller. Okay, so now we're going to save this. Just going to call it tags, and we're going to download it. So just as a PNG, and again we're going to increase the size to about a 3 just so it's nice and sharp, and we're going to download that to our computer. Okay, so I've just opened up a new document and I've dragged my label image over. Now I just want to shrink this down, and I'm going to make it 3 centimeters wide. Now I'm just going to copy and paste my image, and I am just going to keep doing that until I've filled the whole entire document with my label. Okay, so it was a little bit tedious, but I've gone ahead and I have filled up the whole document with my label. Now I want to do a test print before I print it out on my transfer paper, because the transfer paper is quite expensive. Okay, so we want to go to File, Print. Now this might be different on whatever computer you're using. For my settings, I go down to Layout, and then what we want to do is we want to flip the document horizontally. Now we're just going to go and print. So I've gone ahead and done a test print of my labels, and as you can see they have come out backwards, and that is exactly what we want, because when we transfer the labels onto our fabric it will come out the right way. So now that we know that we've got our printer settings correct, I'm going to go ahead and print that onto the transfer paper. So I'm just going to go ahead and put my transfer paper into my printer. So for my printer it goes in with the back side facing up, but every printer will be different. You might just have to do a couple of test runs to work out which way your printer feeds. Okay, so now we have our labels on our transfer paper and they are backwards, so we're good to go. So now that we've got our transfer paper ready, we're just going to cut these into strips, and so that's where the lines that we've got are going to come in real handy. And I probably almost could have squeezed in an extra label, because you really do want to get as many labels out of the one sheet of transfer paper as you can, because that is what's going to make it more cost effective. Okay, so now we are ready to iron these onto our fabric. So now we're ready to iron our transfer paper onto our bias tape, and so I have just cut some tape about the same length as my transfer paper, and I've also got some baking paper down to protect my ironing board. So we want to place the paper face down onto our binding, So because the writing on my tags is quite wide, I have to be careful that it stays really straight. There is no room for any movement. So what I have done is used a peg either side just to hold it in place while I'm ironing. So you want to read your transfer paper instructions. So my transfer paper, for example, says to use a dry heat. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and start ironing. Just go ahead and move the pegs. Okay, so now that's done, we're just going to allow that to cool for a moment. And as you can see, the reason why we use the baking paper is because of the little black lines. We don't want to get that on the ironing board. Okay, so now that's cooled down a little bit, we're just going to take our scissors, paper scissors, and we're just going to trim the excess transfer paper down the side as close to the tape as possible, but without actually cutting into it. Now, the reason why we do it this way is because we don't want the lines from the transfer paper to be on the face of the label, because after a little while that will collect dirt and dust. So this is why we do it this way, so that that transfer paper goes right to the edge. Okay, and so now we can just take the backing off. Okay, and so now we've got our lines here, and we can just cut our tags out. And then we just fold them in half. And there we have our little handmade sew-in labels.